Manga-Waido.
My name is Taishi Yano. According to my grandparents, my dad was not much the working type, always looking for a good time. My mom worked and brought me up until I was about 5 years old. But the pressure really got to her and she had no choice but to have her folks take care of me. After that, my mom and dad simply disappeared. My grandparents weren't very well off. They were living on meager pension payments, but they never complained and always treated me like their own son. During the day, I was looked after by a neighbor and they would be off to work. In the evening, they would cook and play with me. But they were not young and the pressure from working and having to take care of me took its toll. By the time I was 12 years old, he became ill and died of a weak heart. I didn't have any other close relatives and my grandmother was already in a home. As a result, I was put into an orphanage, and that's where I am now. One day, as I was headed to my room, the teacher stopped me in the hall.
Oh, back so soon? Did you go and visit your grandfather's grave? I bet you really miss him, huh?
Yeah, I do. Just my way of paying him back for all he did for me. About the only thing I can do for him. It was the least I could do for him for taking care of me all these years despite his age. So, every weekend, I visit his grave and pay my respects. Then one day, on my way back to visit my grandfather's grave, there was this blonde-haired girl sitting at the bus stop looking very sad and downhearted. Her pretty white dress was covered in dirt. Looked like she'd fallen down or something. I couldn't just pass by and ignore her, so I stopped and asked if she was all right. She slowly looked up at me. She was a pretty girl. At first, I thought she was from a different country, or possibly her mother or father was. For a second, I thought maybe she wouldn't understand me. But then she opened her hands and showed me what she was grasping.
I don't have any money, and I need to take my medicine, but I can't.
Those pills looked familiar. Some kids at the orphanage had them. I think they were for epilepsy. Apparently, she had a slight episode. I told her to sit tight and went over to a vending machine nearby and bought a bottle of mineral water. I watched her as she drank from the bottle and took the medicine. I then waited for her to calm down. What's your name? I'm Taishi. Taishi Yano.
I'm Hina.
Hina, huh? Are you here on vacation?
I moved here to this country from France a little while ago. He's working in Japan now.
Oh, okay, I see. Did you come here to this place with your mom and dad?
It's my father's birthday tomorrow, so I came here looking to buy him something. I didn't tell him because it was supposed to be a surprise. But then I had an episode and I seem to have lost my purse and now I can't go home. Huh? Taishi, right? I really don't want to ask, but could you lend me some money?
Sure, no problem. This should be enough to go home, right?
Thank you so much.
No worries. I'm glad I could help. But you really shouldn't go off on your own like this. I bet your mom and dad are very worried sick about you.
Yes, probably. I'm sorry.
She seemed so sad that I tried to cheer her up by talking about all kinds of stuff. I just went on about all kinds of things. About school, the manga I like, the kind of foods I like, about my friends. I'm not much of a talker, but my efforts seemed to have an effect. She smiled for the first time. She seemed in good spirits now, and her health seemed like it was all back to normal, so I walked her to the station. Then she turned to me.
Oh, yes, that's right.
She pulled out a cute memo from her pocket.
Could you please tell me your phone number? I'll be sure to return the money to you as soon as I can.
Oh, please, you don't have to.
No, I have to. I can't take your money. That wouldn't be right.
She was pretty insistent, so I wrote my phone number down on a sheet of paper, and then we parted ways. A week passed since the encounter. I found myself in front of a huge mansion, of the likes I'd never seen before in my life. I came here because Hina called me a couple of days ago.
My mother and father said they wanted to thank you for the other day. They insist. Would it be possible to come to our house?
I had no idea she would be living in such a grand place. I approached the front door, feeling a bit apprehensive, and pressed the doorbell. Hina and apparently her folks greeted me at the door.
Hello. You must be Taishi. Thank you so much for helping Hina the other day. We are so grateful. I'm Hina's mother, Florence Aikawa.
And I'm her dad, Nori. I'm so glad you were able to come. Hina was looking forward to it. Both her parents were so nice, and they welcomed me into their home with open arms. When I entered and was shown into the dining area, the table was adorned with delicious-looking French cooking. I'd only seen food like this on TV or in the movies.
Please, help yourself. Have as much as you like.
I hesitantly used the forks and knives as best I could, and I tasted the food laid out before me. This is wonderful! It's all so delicious!
I'm so glad. Thank you for the compliment. Please, don't hold back now. Have as much as you want.
We talked and enjoyed all the great food. I know it sounds corny, but for me it was something I'd never experienced before. At least not since my grandfather passed. He used to cook for me every day, although nothing this spectacular. My grandpa wasn't a great cook, but he put his heart and soul into his cooking, which is why it was so delicious. After we enjoyed the meal, I was sitting in the living room playing with Hina when she said,
Hey Taishi, couldn't you live here with us? Then we can play every day.
Huh? Live here?
Yes, you can be my real big brother.
Now, Hina, don't trouble Taishi. He has his life and his family, you know. Actually, I don't have a family. Pardon me? Well, now that I blurted that out, I had no choice to explain myself, and I told them about my parents and how my grandpa brought me up and that he died, and I was currently living at the orphanage. I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to bore you with my life story.
No, please don't say that. Not boring at all. Your grandfather must have been a wonderful person.
Hey, Taishi, could you be Hina's Japanese teacher? She still has a lot to learn. She gets by with daily conversation, but her writing and reading skills are still not adequate.
That would be wonderful. I want Taishi to be my language teacher. Could you, Taishi?
Kinda weird for me to say, but I'm actually doing pretty good in school. Actually, I was teaching the younger kids at the orphanage basic writing and reading skills. Well, if you don't mind a novice like me teaching your daughter, I'm all in.
That's great. It's okay, right, Dad?
So I ended up being Hina's personal tutor. I started the very next day. We scheduled a meeting and writing class twice a week. Hina's mom even cooked me dinner afterwards, and then her father drove me back to the orphanage in his car. This is the kind of environment that I had always dreamed of. I can't convey how comfortable I felt. But then one day, someone totally unexpected showed up.
Hey, Taishi. It's been a long time, hasn't it?
Huh? Why are you here? I was shocked, but it had been years since I last saw her. But there was no mistake. It was my mother.
Oh my god, you've grown so much. So nice to see you again.
After abandoning me all those years ago? You really got nerve showing up here. Get out of my sight!
Please, Taishi, don't be like that. Just give me time to explain. I have some bad news for you. Your father, he passed away.
I don't give a damn about someone who ditched me when I was a child. I don't think of him as my father.
Are you sure about that? Apparently, you're left with his inheritance. But I denied all the rights to his inheritance long ago, so that leaves you the sole beneficiary.
Huh? Why the hell did you deny all rights? What sneaky plan are you concocting?
I always knew you were very smart, Taishi.
That devious smile told me she was up to no good.
Well, it turns out he was deeply in debt. I'm sorry to say, I couldn't be any part of it. I didn't want to be burdened with his useless debts.
What do you want me to do about it? I'm just a kid, for God's sake.
But Taishi, I heard your grandfather left you everything. If you sell his house, it would be quite a bit, wouldn't it?
Are you out of your mind? You don't expect me to sell that house, do you? That place has a lot of memories for me. I don't want Dad's inheritance or have anything to do with his debts.
Sorry, but you're the sole beneficiary. You have an obligation to pay off the debtors. Sorry, that's how the law works, Taishi. I know you're a kid and don't understand this kind of stuff, but it's the law. What can I say? I'll stop by again next week to drop off the paperwork.
What, are you nuts? She wouldn't listen to a word I said. She just shrugged me off and walked away.
Hey, Taishi! Hey, Taishi! What's the matter?
Huh? Oh, yeah, sorry. The day after my mom showed up, I was over at Hina's place for a weekly lesson. But what my mom said worried me, that I had to pay off my father's debts. I couldn't get my mind away from that dreadful thought, and I couldn't concentrate.
You look like you're worried about something. Did something happen?
Yeah, well, it's nothing.
If there's something I can do, just say it. I love being with you, Taishi. If you're in trouble, I want to help in any way I can.
Thanks, Hina. What's wrong, Taishi? I have to agree, you do look worried. It seems Hina's father overheard our conversation and seemed concerned. I was overwhelmed with worry about what my mother told me. I couldn't focus on anything else. I hate to do this to you, but could you give me some advice on a personal matter? I knew I was being a little irrational, but I decided to tell him everything that happened. It's just that I didn't know what to do. I had nobody to turn to. Don't worry about it, Taishi. I'm glad you told me. Hina's dad put his hand on my head to comfort me. It felt so comforting and warm. So much so that it brought tears to my eyes. There's something I haven't told you. Apparently, Hina had an older brother named Kaito. He was a very kind-hearted young man. He loved caring for people and one day wanted to work at a facility much like the place I'm living now. In his last year of high school, he had already been accepted to a college specializing in education when he was involved in an unfortunate incident. During a summer trip to the mountains, he spotted a kid struggling in the river. He dove in to rescue the young man. The kid managed to claw himself ashore, but poor Kaito was swept away by the strong current and lost his life. I know it sounds melodramatic, but I wanted to adopt a child one day, in memory of my son. I know it's sudden and all, but what would you say to being our son, Taishi? We being your foster parents. Hina would be your younger sister. But a guy like me, with this current situation I'm in, I would only cause you grief. That's where you're wrong, Taishi. I would do all I can to get you out of this predicament. I suppose I haven't told you this story before. I was on the verge of tears because of his kindness. I found myself accepting his offer. Deep inside, I was so elated. Then a week later, my mother arrived at the orphanage.
Who the hell are you?
I'm Taishi's stepfather. I adopted him. My name is Nori Aikawa.
What the hell are you talking about? Taishi's my son. There's no changing that.
I can't believe the gal. She has no right to call herself a mother. Well, it's no use talking about it outside. Please visit our home and we'll talk there. My mother was a little reluctant, but she got into his car and they headed to Mr. Aikawa's home. Well, let's get down to it, shall we? Taishi explained everything to me. But I should first tell you that we legally became Taishi's foster parents, so that means you have no legal rights to your son.
But that can't be right. I'm related by blood. You can't change that.
We submitted all the necessary paperwork, which makes him legally our son. There is nothing you can do about it, related or not. My mother abandoned me when I was only 5 and never provided a cent or financial support. She simply tossed me into an orphanage and forgot about me. Those facts were presented in court, and it was obvious to the judge that I was in much better hands.
But what about the inheritance?
Ah, yes, the inheritance. You're right, that's not my specialty, but I am nevertheless a lawyer, specializing in international law. A lawyer? Are you serious? But I do have many colleagues in the legal community, and according to a close associate specializing in adoptions, he says that after legal adoption, the birth mother loses all rights. If you'd like, I could call him and have him over in no time. But then, what shall I do then? What do you mean?
His father was in deep debt. If he is no longer my son and has no obligation to me or my late husband, all the debt obligations would fall on me. Taishi, you have to help me out here.
You haven't changed a bit. You're unfit to be a mother.
I'll change my ways, I promise. I'll give you all the love and care that you need. Please come home to me.
I appreciate that you took care of me until I was 5, and I know Dad wasn't a very good father. But the fact remains that you abandoned me. To be honest, I never want to see your face again.
Please, Taishi, don't say that.
My mother was grief-stricken, and tears poured down her cheeks as she begged me for forgiveness. But I no longer had an ounce of compassion for her. And so my life as the son of Mr. and Mrs. Aikawa began. Last I heard, my mom was living in an old apartment downtown, working the nightlife to make ends meet. But she is no longer young and apparently has a hard time making a living. Well, she lived her life as she saw fit for all these years, even abandoning her only son along the way. Maybe it's time for her to pay her dues. As for me, my mother and father died a long time ago. A few days later, we all visited my grandfather's grave and paid our respects.
Hello, Grandpa. My name is Hina, and this is my older brother.
I bet Grandpa is smiling down on you right now, Hina. We poured water over the gravestone and placed flowers on it. Grandpa, thanks so much for taking care of me. I'll never forget you. I'll stop by again next week, so have a little of this sake and get some rest.
It sure is a beautiful day today, isn't it?
Why don't we go for a long drive to the countryside? What do you say, son? Sure thing, Dad. Son, it seems like Grandpa was satisfied with this outcome.
Hey, big brother. Let's go.
I grabbed Hina's hand, and we rushed toward a new and wonderful life.